to episode number 49 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. This is going to be a fantastic interview for you if you run a business and you know it's time for you to scale, but you're not quite sure how. Or you're worried that if you do scale, you're going to end up not giving the level of customer service that you would really like to give, or your programs will suffer, or your ability to think strategically about your best next step is going to get hindered. So this week's podcast interview is with Tina Forsyth, and she is so cool. You guys, the woman started an industry. Have you ever heard the term OBM? It means online business manager. And Tina actually created the industry. It's so cool. She started her own coaching business in the year 2000, and she really quickly saw that most of the people she was working with, what they really needed was a strategic thought partner by their side to help them see what was happening in the business overall, what steps needed to happen next, and who they needed to hire next. She's also the author of an upcoming book, so exciting. It's called Hire Up, so keep your eyes out for that as well. She's the founder of the International Association of Online Business Managers, and she's also the creator of Certified OBM Training. Sorry, I had to actually read that to make sure I got it right, but she's like really the only one that originally created Online Business Manager Certified Training. So cool. So the links to her website are down below along with her social media channels. And I'm really excited for you to just sort of listen in. Now, Tina has a really cool style about her. You can see what makes her such a great online business manager, but also what makes her such a great trainer for other online business managers. And if you're someone who's interested in becoming trained to be an online business manager, like you really want to help people running business think through their next strategic move in a different way, that sounds appealing to you, Tina's really a great person to get certified with. Now, again, what you'll notice about her style is she's super direct. She's super straightforward. And I loved interviewing her because she actually answered every question I asked, which was so cool. I was like, oh, this is somebody who gets strategic thought. So much fun. So I really hope you enjoy it. I hope it is super useful for you. And if you know you're ready to take this next level, this might be something you really want to listen for inside this interview. Let's get to it. Tina, welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. I'm so happy you're here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here as well.
Yeah. How are you doing overall with all the crazy online world and all the shifting everybody's done to suddenly all be virtual? Have you noticed a big change in your industry? I just have to start right there because I feel like it's been crazy.
Well, you know what's funny? It's like, I've worked online and I've worked from home forever now. So for me personally, kind of from a day-to-day perspective, there wasn't really big changes in that sense. But I remember back in March when everything started shutting down, and then within our OBM community and such too, there was sort of this like a couple of weeks of people just being like, oh, like pausing, right? Like, what's going on? What's going to happen here? And we started talking even within the community, because of course I know we'll talk more about what an OBM is in a moment as well, but in our community, I mean, they're working with a lot of clients and business owners and all that kind of stuff too, helping support them in various ways. And it's been really interesting to see that there's certainly, I mean, in so many ways, this online world is just woof.
It's just exploded. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exploded. And so within our OBM community and within, I know for you and I and just many other people out there, not to say that some people haven't been affected in some ways, by all means, that's true in some cases, but it's been really interesting to see just how the things they come up with and how creative people are being. And, I don't know about you, Sarah, but I even think back to I remember, 2008, 2009, when there was the whole recession around that time too. And I was in the online world at that point as well. And there's just so much about seeing whether people kind of plug in and rise up and get creative or not
Yes.
around certain things.
Yeah, it's really to
You
see.
know?
It's like it's such a separation of almost its personality traits and industries, but also the individuals
Yep.
inside of it, right? Like some people are like, "I'm taking this on, let's go," and others are like, "I don't know what to do. I'm just going to freeze." It's true.
Yeah. And I get I definitely get the freeze. I definitely get the taking
Mm-hmm.
a moment.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, especially for some businesses, brick and mortar that really had the rug pulled out from under them in different
Yeah.
ways. Like, it's not to say that there's some magical solution out there for everybody. But, I always love when there's stuff like this, when what's hitting the fan, so to
Yep.
speak. I find it really interesting to just see how people respond and to see how often people really are like, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's try that, let's go
Mm-hmm.
here, let's rise up, let's connect, let's go together. And as much as there has been and will continue to be, I'm sure variations of crazy going on
Yes.
in our world
Yes.
for a while, like there's something about being online that, I kind of joked with someone a while ago. I've worked online since 1999. It's been a long time. And, people around me in my day-to-day life they just generally don't get it. They're kind of like, you do what? Like,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
we've seen
Yeah.
it online, but whatever.
Because it's online, right? It's
Yeah.
like a thief or
Yeah. It's like,
something.
okay.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, now everybody's been thrown into our world.
Yes, it's true. It's a true story,
Surprise.
man. It's a true story. It's like all of
It
a
is.
sudden everybody's like, oh, wait. I mean, my husband laughs at me every day. He's like, wait, where's the Zoom thing? I'm like, I've been using Zoom for years. He's like, I've never seen it before. I'm like, what? But it really is watching this whole, I guess, brick and mortar world turn into an online world and watching, like you said, some people did have the rug pulled out from under them. And
Yeah.
even some who did ended up doing amazing things with it or reinventing stuff.
Yeah.
And is the mother of invention, but it's been really cool to watch this and watch the progression of creativity and ingenuity, which brings me to, all right, so we have so many questions, Tina, because I think what you have done in your industry is just so amazing. So first of all, let's start by defining what an online business manager is, or an OBM, those three letters we all throw around all the time, those of us in the virtual world, right? What an OBM actually is and how you came to kind of create this industry for us.
Yeah. So OBM stands for Online Business Manager. And the role of an OBM is really to partner with growing businesses. So, I mean, of course, OBMs work with a lot of other online, virtual, et cetera, businesses, but really work with all types of businesses to just help them manage and grow the company. And so the role of an OBM is really things like project management, operations, team, planning, all of those things, very similar to like say an ops manager or even an office manager or a
Right.
COO or whatever in sort of the brick and mortar, the real world.
The corporate, yes.
Yeah, from a corporate or from a brick and mortar perspective, definitely similar to that. I like to also define the OBM role as they're the person that's coming into the business to make sure that the right things get done in the right way, at the right time, and by the right person. And so part of what happens in the journey of growing a business, I'm sure you can relate to this, I can relate to this as well. In the early days, it's just us kind of doing our thing and trying to figure out what we're doing. And maybe we have a little bit of support, like we might have a VA or we might have some tech or website or whatever support around us. But for the most part, it's just kind of us chugging along and doing our thing. And then as our business starts to grow, there comes a point that's usually around the early six-figure mark where all of a sudden, I kind of lovingly like to call it oh shit, I have a real business now.
Yes, I think that's a great way to define it. It's like, oh my God, this is real. This is really happening.
Yeah, it's real, it's growing. It's usually at that stage where it becomes more than we can handle on our own. Like for some people, we'll really feel the weight of it and feel like we have to keep the weight of it and whatever. But, other times it just things start falling apart, things start getting messy. This is generally the space where an OBM is going to plug in to work with the client, because then they're working together to make sure that there's a foundation in place and there's planning in place and there's structure in place and there's people in place and people can be, it doesn't have to mean tons of people, but just, the right people in the right way. so that the business can continue to grow and expand, because when we are the business owners, I mean, we're focused on growth.
Right.
We're focused on where we're headed. We're focused on delivering whatever it is we do. Usually whatever reason we started our business and we're doing whatever we're doing, I mean, for me, it's like coaching, teaching, writing, like there's things that we do that we want to be able to keep doing.
Yeah.
That's where we want to have our attention and energy as business leaders. But of course, if we're too caught up in the day-to-day and the managing of everything, I find the managing piece is one that sneaks up on people. Like a lot of business owners that, of course, colleagues and clients and people I've known over the years, like it feels pretty obvious to know that we need doing help along the way.
Yeah.
Like we need virtual assistants. We need people who, are going to take care of tech things and admin things and customer service and maybe help with some marketing, whatever. We really need the doers, but that management role is the piece that will often sneak up on us. And it's not uncommon for, when people are in that space, it's like, we feel like we have to keep doing it all, or we have to keep being the manager.
Yes.
But we really don't have to, like that idea of like, did this get done? Did that get done? Oh my gosh, what is this person?
Like who's ticking and tying and who's taking care? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, did this person, does this person need something from me? Did they get their work done? What do I need to give to them? We need somebody else here. We need whatever there. Like just all of that stuff. That's really that management piece.
Do you find it's like the management of the tasks, or is it also the management of the humans who are doing the tasks? Or is it both?
Oh yeah, it's both. Like,
okay.
It really is. I mean, it's just this idea of who's responsible to make sure that things are getting done.
Yeah.
Again, like the right things at the right time, in the right way, and by the right people. Like that's how I define the role of management in a company, is really that. Like, that, and a lot of times OBMs, they're really in that space, like where the strategy meets implementation.
Yes.
So it's up to me as the business owner to know where I'm headed and what I'm creating and why I'm creating it and how we want to get there. Of course, and I can work with coaches and other people to help with that piece, to get that piece figured out. But then taking that and actually bringing it to life, that's a whole other ballgame, So it really is that idea of an OBM plugging in and being like, okay, we got this strategy, we got these goals. Let's turn them into plans. Let's turn it into steps. Let's get figured out all the pieces and who's going to do what and when and what that's going to look like to really build this thing and move forward.
Does the element of actually inspiring the team or getting people excited about the projects they're working on and actually pulling at the strength of the team, right? Because sometimes you might have someone who, like you said, not in the right position, but a great person to have on the team, just maybe not in the right position. Does an OBM help with that strategy as well?
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces to the team part. So culture, values, overall kind of vibe, if you will, in a business, that's still on us.
Okay.
Like that's, as the leader, that's up to us to really set and be purposeful with those things. But by all means, like the OBM plugging in and, who's doing what and is the right person in the right seat on the bus, and are they doing things? Are they doing it well? It's not uncommon for an OBM to start working with a client and, as they're getting to know the business and know the team, maybe there's a person that is over here that could be over there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a person that truthfully maybe just isn't working out that well and needs to go. And a lot of times it's like, oh, you're going to need more people in certain places, right? Like we need somebody here, or we need somebody there. We're going to need somebody in this spot as well as things continue to grow. So really that functional kind of structural and day-to-day working with the team.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I asked that question because I've had a huge background in corporate. And what I always said, I had this, I was love the startups, right? And what I found is usually the entrepreneur or the creative brain that came up with the idea to start the business doesn't always have the brain to manage, right? And not just manage tasks, but that's a real skill set to actually manage people. And so I think that I just have this vision of like, wouldn't it be great if like all of the managers in corporate who don't know how to manage, they just kind of either got promoted that way, or the CEOs who start the stuff, if they all just had their own like OBM at their disposal, because it's such a critical role that I think gets overlooked, and it causes massive problems when people don't understand either how to manage or how to keep track of things properly, or they can't see things clearly because it's their vision, right? Like they're so excited about the content and what they're creating that they can't see what's happening to the overall structure. It's just amazing.
I saw Barbara Corcoran speak. This was a number, back in the day when we could leave our house.
When we could see people. Yes.
It was quite a while before then even, but I saw her speak at a couple of times at a couple of different events. And I always loved this example that she gave, because she talked about the idea of the expander and the container.
Okay.
And the expander is the one that's like, that's the person with the vision and the drive. And like you said, they're starting it. We got our ideas. We're like, woo, let's make this thing happen. And the early stages of business can just be driven by that within us, right? Like our own, like, woohoo, let's get going and make this thing happen.
Yes.
But that's the expander role. And then the container role is the one that's like, okay, yes, you got this idea. Okay, here's what that's actually going to mean. Here's what that's actually going to take. We're going to need this, this, and that. Okay, we've already got this going on. So, we're going to need to consider, is this now the priority? Is that now the priority, et cetera? And she talked about like this, that idea of like in her business, of course, she's the expander, and she had a woman, I don't remember her name, but she had somebody that worked with her, I think all through the years.
That's awesome.
Who was that container for her, right? And it's like, you can't have one without the other. It's really easy for us to think that we want to run a business based on who we are.
Yes.
But then when the business becomes bigger than us, that means it has to be bigger than us, right? Like It can't be run just based on who we are. And so, to be like, oh, I have my last minute ideas and I want them to happen tomorrow. Well, I get it. Nice. I am that person too. I have way too many ideas. Like in theory, I'd love to do them all tomorrow, but like, the reality of it is, especially if you want to do things well, that's just not the way it works, And so that idea of really honoring that space of like, yeah, we're not meant to be the managers. We're not meant to be the doers or the managers.
Yes.
This stuff. We're really not.
Yes. And I know, but I think really accepting that, I think that's like when your business hits a new level is when you, as like the creative mind that came up with the whole thing, it takes a little bit of humility to go, oh, right. At this point, this isn't my role anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I remember watching that happen in different startups I was working on. I ended up being the business manager. I didn't go in for that, but that was always ended up being my role. And watching the CEO or the founder really struggle. Like it was those times where we're like, you can't do that anymore. But that's how I started that. Yes, that was the startup phase. That is correct. And that's what that takes. And like you said, I love how you said that, Tina, like the energy it takes, like in the beginning, you're so excited. You could like knock down a building and put it back together again, no problem. But there comes a point that's not sustainable. And the humility and the acceptance of the fact that we can't do it all, nor should we, and we'll actually end up hurting our mission if we try to continue. I think that's such an important distinction that you just shared there about when it's time to hire an online business manager and to actually have the humility to do that.
It was funny because like you were asking about my own journey around some of this too. So I back in, I think it was 99 or so, I came across the coaching industry. Okay. And just fell in love with the coaching industry and like, wow, this is awesome. And I took some coach training and, within a couple of years was like, yeah, I'm a life coach or whatever the heck I called myself at the time. I don't remember. Career coach, something. And literally I was out there kind of like trying to build this coaching business, had no clue what the heck I was doing, had no clients. Now, like that was a long time ago now. But I had this opportunity come up to work on the back end of a really large coach training organization at the time, like multi-7-figure, thousands of members, et cetera. I mean, that's kind of the norm these days.
Yeah, it is now. It is now.
Yeah, it was not the norm in those days. I was with Thomas Leonard, for anyone who knows who he is.
Okay.
He unfortunately passed away in 2003. But, I had the opportunity to work with him and his company behind the scenes. And, I started with event management and then kind of became sort of the right hand to the COO type thing in that company. Right. And it was funny because when I plugged in at first, I was like, I'll just do this a little bit on the side while I'm building my coaching business. But it really quickly flipped around.
Interesting.
Because I love I love the whole behind the scenes. Thomas was an amazing visionary. Many consider him one of the main founders of the coaching industry, period. Like he founded the ICF and all kinds of things.
Wow.
So, it's just like this idea of this visionary and all these ideas and woo, all these things. And then just being a part of that team and the business and everything that brought it to life. I really fell in love with doing that work. And so it really kind of quickly flipped for me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I do like being over here more so than trying to build my own coaching business at the time. After Thomas passed away in 2003, it was a little bit of like, well, what am I going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't going to stay with the company. I didn't know, like, I knew I didn't want to call myself a VA, like a virtual assistant, because of course, virtual assistants and such were also around at that time. And I'm like, that's not what I'm doing. Because I knew I was more like at this kind of partnery level with clients, like, hey, we're getting together, we're making decisions, we're laying out plans, we're, all that kind of, and then I'm driving it from there. So I knew I was operating at a different level. And so just started calling myself an online business manager.
That's amazing. And wait, what year was that? You said 1999?
That would have been 2003-ish.
2003. Okay.
Around about that time. So after I left working with Thomas's company there with Coachville, I started working with other 6-7 figure coaches behind the scenes, running everything for them. And over time, there was a couple of things that started to happen because people would be like, hey, Tina, I need someone who does what you do to work with me.
Me one.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like, there was a handful of other people that were doing OBM level work that were all busy. And it was like, sorry, only so much of me to go around, and likewise, I mean, to be honest with you too, I started seeing other people out there who were calling themselves OBMs, but they weren't doing OBM level work.
Got it.
So they were kind of using the title, but they were actually plugging in as more of a VA or like a web tech person or a whatever, but they were
like a project manager more maybe than as opposed to a strategic.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Like, so I was, I remember I was looking around, this was like 2007-ish, 2008 timeframe. And one of the clients I was working with, who's a very good friend and, business partner in many ways, Andrea Lee, she was always like, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. You got to write a book about this. And I'm like, all right, fine. I'll write a book, about becoming an OBM. So I wrote a book, which is somewhere, well, it's back there. I know that on the shelf behind me. My Becoming an OBM book. I wrote that in 2008. I literally thought I would write a book and that would be it. Like, okay, everybody, if you want to be an OBM, go read this book.
Right.
You're good. Bye, have fun kind of thing. But it very quickly became more than that. It became, there was people who wanted more training, and we started the association, and the training and the certification and the association and everything were all born out of that, 2009 timeframe there. And so for me, it was, I had been the OBM in my business, or for many others for years. And then in my business myself too, like as my own business was developing and I was starting to do the training and all that kind of stuff too. It was funny. I was working with a coach end of 2009 going into 2010. And end of 2009 was like, okay, that was the last time I was ever going to do OBM work for clients. I was totally focused on the certification and the association and everything moving forward. And I remember my coach at the time is like, Tina, you need to hire your own OBM.
Oh, note to self. That's happened to me too. That's amazing.
I was just like, oh, like honest, I swear I had not even thought like
that is so funny.
But I was so used to just doing everything on my own.
Right.
And it's especially dangerous when we can do
I was just going to say that, like, but when you can, you just keep doing it, right? I mean, how do you know? Well, that was going to lead me to my next question though, Tina. I love that you actually went through this, because the next question was like, how do you know as a business owner? Because we have a lot of business owners listening to the podcast. Like, how do you know when you're like, oh, it's time? Like, what has to happen? Like in this instance, your coach let you know. What do you think would have happened? I'm asking twofer. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I'm so curious about this. So one, when do you know when it's time for you as the business owner? And two, what do you think would have happened to you in your own business if you hadn't ended up hiring an OBM?
Yeah, I think, how do we know? It's really when us getting caught in the day-to-day of everything gets in the way of growing the business. That's
Okay.
my number one tip. So, I always
Okay.
like to say a little tongue in cheek. You don't hire an OBM, a business manager, if you don't have a business for them to manage yet, right? Like, because
That
there is
makes
that
sense.
first, yeah, there's that early stage of business, which is kind of the loosely up to six figure, not, the numbers could be more or less than that, right? But just this idea, that early stage of like, what am I doing? What am I selling?
Hmm.
Who am I serving? We're kind of trying things on and seeing what it is and isn't. And then there's a stage, I like to call it the, okay, I've proven my business model stage,
Okay.
right? And so that's like, oh, I've found something that I can offer that people want to buy from me. And it's happened multiple times. It
And
wasn't
it's
just a one
selling.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't just a one time like, oh, this worked. And then it fizzled out. It's like, no, I found my groove. And so usually, of course, that means more money's coming into the business at that point. That's generally in the like earlier six figure stage, right? But when you have like, I remember a friend of mine years ago when I started teaching and talking about OBMs, she's a coach and she had heard about, I think she read my first book actually, but I remember her coming to me. She's like, oh my gosh, I get it. She's like, now I understand. She had shared that, like, she had a team, she had a couple of VAs working with her and maybe some
Hmm.
other people I don't remember, but she's like, I would get so annoyed. It's like, why do these people keep bugging me? Why do they keep asking me for questions?
Oh, interesting.
Why can't they just get things done? Like, it was all this management stuff
Yes.
that
Yeah.
needed to happen in the business that was falling on her shoulders.
Right.
But because she hadn't even thought of this concept of like, oh, I can get help with that part, it was just like, these people on my team keep bugging me. Why can't they just get stuff
Yeah.
done and leave me alone? And it's like, so it's sort of this idea of, for different people, the signs might look a little different, but it becomes an urgency when you actually can't grow anymore, is when it becomes an urgency.
Got it. Because you're
Right.
busy, like, say, even doing managing, like, hey, did you get back to that client? Hey, did you get that thing up on the website? Hey, did you guys get that thing ordered or whatever? Right. That when you're having to like kind of follow up on those little tasks, you
Exactly.
can't be creating, right? You can't be looking at the next big revenue stream. You can't be looking at the
Yep.
next launch or the next strategy. Okay. So
Yep.
that's really
Or
helpful.
yeah, and I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I'm assuming those are different parts of our brain too,
Yeah, I
right?
would think so.
Like,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
brain can't be in creative, woohoo, let's move forward, whatever zone, when I'm like, oh, is this going on or that what happened
Correct.
there?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
it's
correct.
just, we can't. And so it might be this idea of, you might see yourself not able to keep growing, or you might find stuff falling apart behind the scenes. So this is
Mm.
another one that's not uncommon, especially these days,
Oh,
right?
right.
People are good at marketing. Being good at marketing can actually be a dangerous thing if you don't pair it with
If
the
you
bad.
can't deliver. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't
Yeah.
deliver, right? And I mean, an OBM plays a huge role in making sure you've got a good, solid back end in the business. But like, you could be really good at marketing and got a whole, woohoo, a big launch, met some goals, yay, that's all exciting. But then nobody's getting anything. Nobody's happy. Their things are
Yes.
falling apart. Nobody's taken care of. They're asking for refunds. They're whatever. Like, that's kind of this extreme sign, if you will.
Yeah.
Of,
But it's a good marker, right? Because I think people listening can get that. It can be like,
yeah,
oh, there was that one time I had that huge offer. It was great. And then I messed up. So that's kind of a
yeah,
sign to look at, like, yes, but if somebody else was managing all those little pieces and getting back to customers in a timely manner and making sure they're looking at, what are they looking at? What are they not looking at? Did that get out on time? While you're out there continuing to market in a different
yeah.
way. It's I think that's a really important distinction. So I'm glad we talked about that.
There's also a lather, rinse, repeat thing that kicks in too, because when we've been in business for a while, it's like, we do things that we know we're going to do again in the future. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, hey, we
Right.
did the promotion. Here's all the things we did. Here's the templates. Here's the whatever. Here's what really
Right.
worked. Here's the steps. And when we don't have any process, when we don't have any systems, when we don't have any planning, when we're just winging it and flying by the seat of our pants all the time, it's like, we go to do that thing again a few months later. And it's like, well, what did we do again? Where was that? Where was
Right.
this? Like, everything's this, when it feels like it's just this giant mess.
Mm-hmm.
Money's coming in, but it's still feeling like a giant mess. That's definitely a really big sign for that too. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
for me, your question about what do I think would have happened?
Yeah.
Like, because here's what did happen, right? So my coach, hire an OBM. Well, duh, there's a novel
I
concept.
just think that's the best story ever. I love that.
It was so funny. And then so I hired my first OBM, Tiffany, January 2010. We worked together for many, many years after that. So
Okay.
Tiffany came in and did everything that, she was there to do, right? Like just, took everything over and was running everything and all kinds of stuff. So it was really, it was really awesome for her and I to work together. One of the things that happened about, I don't know, maybe about 6-ish months into her and I working together, I had what I call my identity crisis
Okay.
around this. Because what happened up to that point, being who I am, and the first 10 years of the business was more or less just me doing my thing. I maybe had a little bit of VA support here and there. That was it, and then all of a sudden the business is this whole other beast, and Tiffany's in there running things with me. People would come and it came a point where I wasn't the one that knew everything in my head all the time anymore. Right.
Yes.
Because before it was like, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that. Like I wasn't in every single thing anymore.
Yeah.
It also there was things that started to happen, like people on the team and or even clients and such too. They would start going to Tiffany for answers instead of coming to me.
Yes.
And I had this really big, I had this identity crisis moment of still the same coach I was working with at the time as well, where I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm no longer the one doing everything, then who the heck am
Who
I?
am I? Yes. Yes. Yes.
Like
I
it
totally
was
get that.
and it was so like I can feel it almost viscerally. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
answering your question in a roundabout way, right? Because I could really see this road, and I see this happen with people all the time, right? I could really see this road where I could have been like, well, no, I'm going to take it all back. Like, oh no, this person's not doing it right, or this person, no, forget it, whatever. I would have done something to sabotage the shit out of this way we were working
I
together.
got it.
And then it
Yes.
would have all been back on my shoulders. And then, yep, I would have been back in the thick of things, and I would have been the one, all this kind of stuff. And I remember having this conversation with my coach, and he was very much like, oh yeah, this is like, you have to redefine your role, right? Like you have to redefine who I am and how I'm valuing myself even
Yes.
in the business.
Yes.
This idea of like, I'm there to be the leader. I'm there to be, all that kind, the CEO, essentially. I'm there to be the coach and the trainer and the whoever for my clients, all of that. And so it was a bit of a journey, that part, because I could really see that crossroads, right? Where it's like, oh, I could have sabotaged the shit out of that.
I love that you know that, because you know who I'm talking to, whoever's listening right now, if that's you. Like,
Well,
if like you've hired somebody to do stuff and then you like take it back and like, they didn't do it the way I would do it. They didn't do it like this. And I would imagine, is that part of, do you talk to your OBMs about anticipating that moment for the people who hire them? Like there's going to be a day where the person who just hired you is going to freak out and just know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's part of their growth. It doesn't reflect on you. It's part of them understanding their new role. I can imagine that being a pretty intricate conversation to have with someone who's hired you.
It comes up for sure. We talk about it a lot in the OBM community. When I'm working with business owners to make that shift into like CEO mode and to leading and all that too, like when we talk about it from that perspective as well. And it's not always the easiest thing to navigate, right? Because we're getting into some deeper stuff. Yes. I know for me, because I also remember at that time, I remember recognizing like when I was in grade 3, I decided I was going to get straight A's because I always wanted to be the smartest person in the room and the one that everybody turned to when they had questions or needed help or any of that kind of stuff.
So it was part of your identity.
Yep, totally part of my identity. And so it was like, that was true, like all my life in different ways up to that moment about 10 years ago, where it's like, then I really had to be like, okay, if I still have this need to be the smartest person in the room, to be the one that everybody turns to, et cetera, then there's no way I would be able to get that kind of help in place, because I always would sabotage it. I always would find something wrong with it. I would always pick it apart. I would always whatever with that. And so, I always invite people, especially if and where and we all have, not good experiences with trying to hire and all, like, let's be real. It's a challenging part of business. It's tough. Sure. Yeah. It's a tough part. But if you find like that you've had, like, I've tried this and it just doesn't work out, and I've tried it again, and I've tried it again, I've tried it again. By all means, there could be issues with knowing who you need. There could be issues with your hiring process. Like there could be issues with the tactical part of it, for sure. That's always something to look at. But sometimes too, there's just this deeper thing going on for some of us.
Yeah. No, I mean, I work with my clients on it all the time. It's like,
Yep.
it's that moment when like you can see what you need to do. It's like, it's very clear to me if I'm going to grow, I need somebody who's like under me taking care of all the stuff so I can go grow. Right. It's so clear. And then it's that moment where you're like, my current behavior, sabotaging, not finding the right person over and over and over. It's like, this is actually not helping. What the hell is going on here? Because this doesn't make sense. And I think this is why I think everybody should have a coach all the time, right? Because you need somebody by your side who's going, that's actually not useful for you to keep doing. Right?
Yeah.
And I can imagine, since you developed this entire industry by starting out as a life coach, you have an ear for that, even in those that you're training and that are getting certified under you, right? That's like, by the way, keep in mind, you're still dealing with human beings who have these backstories and have built their identities based on what happened in the third grade, like we've all done.
For real.
And where is that hidden, and how can you help them get through it or point them in the right direction to help them navigate it? Because I think it's, as I work with women in their businesses too, I think it's the number one thing women do to just mess stuff up is I got to be important. I have to be the one people come to. I have to do that. And it's really interesting to see how that identity gets wrapped up in that. It's such a strong, healthy conversation for us to be having right now, I think. Yeah.
And it's still something that I get challenged with all along, right?
Sure.
So I started the OBM training and certification back in 2009. A few years ago, I decided I wanted to, I was kind of looking at a few options with everything that was going on. I mean, to keep it real with you, I personally was tired of doing the training. I'm like, I'm just, bored. I had done it so many times. And it was also at the point where it's like, I was 7 years out from being an OBM. So I'm like, okay, am I still the best person to do this?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I by all means, I know it and such, but it was like,
that was smart
in there anymore at the same level. So I had this thing of, about 4 years ago or so, it was another bit of a identity crisis, if you will, of like, maybe not identity, but like, okay, what am I going to do with this thing? Like, do I find somebody else to run things? Do I sell it? Do I whatever? What do I, I didn't want to sell it, but what do I do with this whole OBM thing that I've created? And then it was actually one of the ladies in my community that came to me one day and she's like, Tina, have you ever thought of licensing other people to do the training for you? And I was like, ding, 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 like giant light bulbs on my head. And I was like, oh my gosh. That's awesome.
Oh, that. Yeah.
So
oh, wow.
I have 4 certified trainers right now.
Awesome.
One of whom is that original lady, Sarah. Who
really? That's fantastic.
And the thing that's been interesting there again too, right? It's like, so now they are the face of the OBM world. I'm not.
Oh, interesting.
It's part of what I wanted too, right? Like I've always been very aware, like, starting the OBM thing, it's not like, oh, hey, here's my program about X. It's like, no, it's an industry. Like
you created an industry.
Yeah,
yes.
It's an industry. And it's like, so it can't just be, oh, it's Tina's face on the industry. Like that doesn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense, especially as we've continued to grow, it didn't make sense. And so similar kind of thing though, even a few years ago when the trainers, it was about 3 years ago, I think that the trainers started, their training and they're out there and they're much more the face now of like, hey, come in, be an OBM, et cetera.
Right.
And then people still get certified by the association and everything with that. But even that too is another version of an identity crisis.
It is. I was just going to say that. Yes. Yeah.
Ooh, I'm not the only the be all end all OBM person or whatever anymore. So there's always layers of that.
Yeah, no, Tina, you have it's no wonder you invented this industry because you have a really keen knack for understanding what your role is. And obviously that's what makes you so great at being starting this whole OBM industry, right? As an online business manager has to understand their role. And you can clearly see it's how you're able to train all these people and come up with this certification program because you can see where the different parts need to go so clearly. It's something I've heard, I believe this is the 3rd time that we've had interactions where we've been able to talk like this. And I have always noticed that about you, that you have this ability to sort of walk into a room and sort of figure out Like, what's happening where? And I'm sure that started in the third grade, like it did for so many people.
Maybe.
But it's really cool to watch, like that you have this ability to see this. And I think it's a really important skill for people to understand they need inside of business. And it doesn't mean you have to have it. And I think that, again, that was the brilliance of what you created here, which leads me to my next question, which is if somebody's listening and they're like, oh, I have that skill, I can do that too. And I love doing that. And I don't want to be the face of the business. I want to be the one who makes businesses run.
Yeah.
I should be an online business manager. If somebody just had that thought, what should they do?
Onlinebusinessmanager.com is our main website.
Okay.
Certifiedobm.com will get you into the training and et cetera side of things as well too. So that's where there's more details about the training and the certification and everything as well. Onlinebusinessmanager.com is also where people can find and hire OBMs. So
awesome. Okay.
Anybody who might be like, ooh, I think I need this level
yes. Yes, please.
We've got a free directory. We've got a posting, like you can put your needs in there and it gets sent out to everybody and such.
Oh, that's great.
Connect with people there. I mean, that's the mission of the association really, is to connect, to train and certify OBMs and then connect them with the business.
The right business owners. Yeah.
Their support with that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Well, Tina, it's been so great to chat with you today. I did want to ask you, I believe you had something you wanted to share with the audience.
Oh, yes. Yeah. One thing I just put a resource together recently for hiring, and it's like an interview script, if you will.
Oh, awesome.
For hiring contractors. So this is the other thing too, we're kind of talking through the lens for many of us when we're building out our team in those, especially the, early 6 up to 7 figure range. We're often working with contractors. We're not hiring full-time employees, maybe a little bit, but generally not needing to. And so when you're hiring a contractor though, it's not the same thing as hiring an employee. It's really not. But there's still so much in default of like, oh, I'm hiring, we're all using all these old hiring things from like corporate and brick and mortar and whatever that we use to hire an employee. It's a different thing when you're hiring a contractor. I mean, first and foremost, they're a business owner as well. So it's a business to business transaction.
Oh, I love that. Yes, it's such an important distinction. I think people miss it all the time.
Oh, and because of that, we really want to run the conversation differently. We can still be interviewing people per se to become a part of the team, but we want to run that interview process differently. And there's some really key things to be looking for during that process as well that you want to be aware of. And so I have a free, I guess I'm not checklist. It's more like a guide, if you will, with kind of the steps, like the questions to ask and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's
and the
great.
different kind of stages of how to run that interview.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, ladies, we will have that up in the show notes so that you can grab that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can grab that under this video. All right, ladies, this has been amazing. Tina, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being on with us today and for inspiring us and watching you or taking us on the journey of you creating a freaking industry. The whole industry. Like, oh my God, that's so amazing. So I hope people have been inspired and excited today. And I'm so glad we got to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you.